Hello and welcome to a video with me, Raindell, and today we'll be talking about Raviesse. It's the third episode of our MR Spotlight series, and we're featuring another tank today, but a very special one. If you look at her master ability, she gets extra evasion, and then there is something that she has that's unique and that no UR unit with her kit has, and that's decreased AP consumption. And that's really important. If you think about the cost of Taunting Blade, which is really high, being able to cast that with fewer AP means that she can get it earlier in the fight, and that makes her more reliable in a way than many other tanks in the game. Now, if you look at her stats, she is not as tanky as many other tanks. For example, Neisha and Mont will be tankier to physical attacks than she is, but she has other advantages. Now, one thing I want to mention in terms of evasion is even though she has some evasion in her kit and in her passive abilities, Raviesse is not among the most evady characters in the game. She is less evady, even with all of those, than Engelbert is, to give you an example. So while we can build her towards evasion, if she doesn't have a buff, such as the shadow cast from her thief job, she is not going to reliably dodge. So she really needs this extra push in order to be a powerful evasion unit. Her support abilities are generally pretty good. I would say all four of them are good for different applications. The one that I always keep on no matter what is Holy Knight's Protection, because since her role is as a tank, having extra defense makes a huge difference. I swap the other one around depending if I want more movement, a little bit more evasion, or cast Taunting Blade more easily. In terms of counter abilities, Paladin's Guard is really where it's at. It reduces physical damage, and well, she's a physical tank, so there we go. As an evasion tank, though, she can tank magic pretty well, because if she doesn't get hit, it doesn't matter what her weaknesses are. So that's it about tanking. Now, let's take a look at her main job, and she is the Paladin main job, which is the primary tank job in the game. What she has is rather strong attack with Blade Bash, but mainly it's about staying alive longer, casting Immortal Spirit to ignore the next fatal blow, and then Saintly Wall to reduce physical damage taken. If she is to be used as a dedicated tank, she kinda needs the Paladin sub-job because it's her only way to generate hate using Taunting Blade. Now, if she's in an evasion setup and doesn't get hit, she does not actually lose hate. So that can be an advantage of running her in evasion. You can only equip Vow of Love on her, and then as long as she doesn't get hit, she maintains the ability to tank for the rest of your team. Now, in terms of sub-jobs, she has two very interesting sub-jobs. For an evasion build, the Samurai job will give her access to Illusion, which allows her to boost evasion for several members of your team. So that can be good if she sticks close to them. It also has some pretty powerful ranged attack that she doesn't really have aside from Taunting Blade usually. Now, the Thief job has two very nice tools in my opinion. The first one is Shadowcast, which increases evasion by 42. Now that's almost double what Illusion does, but only for herself. So if she manages to stay away from the rest of your team and they're not hit by AoE, it's actually better to use Shadowcast on her. And the other move I really like is Steel Heart. So if you turn off her other ranged options, well, as long as she's not in melee with the enemy, she can potentially charm them in combat, which is pretty handy in the proper setup. So that's what we'll be doing. We will be running her in two different teams, one for evasion and one for tanking, regular tanking. Without further ado, let's look at our team compositions. So we'll be running two different teams here, but their intent remains the same. The idea is we'll have Laswell move forward with Mirage on himself to protect him from the first attack, and during this time, the character to the right will move to center, casting a buff. Then Laswell will take one hit and survive thanks to Mirage, and we will use Raviesse to move forward, and from that point, she should be tanking. So that's really our game plan. On the first team, we are built for evasion, as you can tell from our gear and support here. Raviesse has Immortal Spirit turned off because she needs to cast Shadow Cast on turn 1, then uses only Blade Bash as an ability that's turned on, because if she's 2 or 3 squares away from an enemy, we want her to use Steel Heart. And the only thief abilities that are enabled are Shadow Cast, Steel Heart, and that's it. That's her goal in this team. I'll quickly show you the stats if you want to do something similar, and then same goes here. With Laswell's stats, all his abilities are turned on. And then finally Halloween Little Leela, whose only ability on her White Mage kit is Full Life. So there we go. And very quickly, our offensive setup, we have different VCs, and we are switching her towards Paladin normally. So she can use Taunting Blade and Sentinel to keep her hate up. She is way tankier in this setup, like it's a massive difference, but she's not as evadey, so we have to trade off a couple things here for it to work offensively. And in this setup, Raviesse actually has very decent damage. As for Ruined Sterne, he's in the Samurai sub-job, and all his abilities are turned on. We don't want to mess with his AI too much. He has a pretty good one from the get-go. So, those are our teams. Let's begin combat. Alright, so here we go. We're running our evasion setup. So, the whole idea here is not getting hit. We are afraid of Sakura landing a 100% hit ability on us. But Duane and Kayn don't have that much accuracy, so if it's against them that we should be good. Now, our Raviesse does have high faith, so an attack from Sakura will get her down, no matter what. So that's really what we are afraid of, and it's going to be tough. So we need Laswell to take her out early enough. Now, that's a rough start. She's getting hits on him, but he seemed to have dodged everything. I'm not sure whether it took out his Mirage or not, because the animation was so fast. I hope it didn't, but we'll see. Now, what's fun is Laswell gets to take her out, so their source of 100% hit is out. Now, that was a hit on Laswell, and a second one immediately, so that's pretty rough, but we get the Charm Kayn in exchange, and now what's going to happen is Halloween Little Leela will cast Full Life, so she's not actually attacking Kayn. That means Kayn will get a turn hitting their team. Now, very unfortunate, we did not get to make use of Full Life because it failed. And Laswell has 50 faith, so the odds of it functioning were actually in the positives. But hey, now that's making it a lot tougher. We can tell that Raviesse in our team is not tanky at all. Like, she has a lot of evasion, but if she does get hit, she goes down pretty quickly. Now, Kayn can probably one-shot our Halloween Little Leela. Oh, he couldn't. So we managed to win the fight, but by a very thin margin. We did get to see a nice Steel Heart from Raviesse, so that was nice. But let's see if we can make it a little bit better. Alright, another team featuring Duane, this time with Rain and Ruined Sterne. And among these, Ruined Sterne is really the most scary character for us, because he has an accuracy buff in his kit. So if he throws that out and begins hitting us, we might be in trouble. We also turned off Immortal Spirit for Raviesse in this fight because we want her to use Shadow Cast. So ideally, she will cast that and move forward, meaning that she'll be a lot tougher to hit in the early turns. But it also means that she will be squishy, so it is quite likely that she goes down. And with the movement of our team, Laswell also gets an enemy range before the rest of our guys, so he's likely to go down here. So not the ideal start. Now we have Saintly Wall on, we have Shadowcast, and we're starting to cast a Revive, and the enemy team will now be in range to start moving onto Halloween Little Leela. But apparently, again, we don't get our Revive. A very unfortunate start. It would have been much easier had we gotten one of those off, because we would just survive a lot better. Now we're kind of depending on Halloween Little Leela to do the damage. But as you can tell, with this setup, the evasion from Raviesse is actually very good, and she keeps the enemy aggro for a while. Now, there we go. We keep tanking for a while. Now, she has played a couple turns, so her Shadowcast will be wearing out, and she'll begin getting hit again. And that's a very scary perspective because she doesn't have much in terms of tankiness increase. So, Ruin Sterne follows, and she now goes down. And if we had Laswell hitting the enemy team here for this entire fight, we would be in a pretty good position. But as it stands, with only Halloween Little Leela fighting, it's clearly going to be a loss. Still, pretty good showcase of how in an evasion setup, Raviesse can be a decent frontliner for your team. She took a lot more hits than if she had been in a tank build there. Okay, so now we're running our offense setup, and it's funny because it's all evasion units, but they are built towards damage this time. And I'm not especially afraid of Warrior of Light tanking his way through our team because we have a lot of defense penetration. But again, Sakura's really strong against all of our teams, so if she gets to attack us, we will likely be in a lot of trouble. So it's kind of a damage check to see how quickly we can kill Sakura before she kills us. And I'm happy with our characters moving forward quickly because it means that she also moves forward and uses her limit break early. And with that, she's sort of in a vulnerable position where we can actually get a hit on her and take her out quickly. And the second that she goes down, the enemy team's damage source is out. So that was the main reason for having Laswell in the middle here, because I knew he would move forward and take the hit. And with his Mirage, he was actually going to survive the attack from Sakura. So that's a strategy. When she's in the middle slot, she attacks on turn 1 if you have a unit with jump 2 that moves forward, and you can actually use that to fight her. Now, as you can tell, our Raviesse got the aggro from Sakura, from Agrias, basically didn't take any damage from her. So we're in a very good position where our tank's in place. She's ready to take the hits from Agrias until the end of the fight. And even though she's confused, I don't really mind that on her because she doesn't hit that hard. Yeah, sure, she hits Laswell. I don't care much. Now Agrias is going to use one of her moves on Raviesse again, undoing the confusion, and still not doing much damage. So we can just hit on Agrias as much as we want and eventually win the fight. And now you see, Raviesse actually does pretty decent damage with the lightning sword. So and an offensive setup. So it was almost comparable to the damage from Ruin Sterne. So you can build her into an attacker unit up to some point. That was a pretty good match, mainly because we were able to kill Sakura early. Let's find another. Okay, so we're fighting a very interesting enemy team here. The enemy, Frederica, has bells, which means that Agrias will have difficulty generating hate because she won't be able to cast Taunting Blade that early, or at least not several times. But I'm afraid of just getting barraged to death. So we'll see what happens. Raviesse really has to take the aggro there, otherwise we'll be in a lot of trouble. And I like how they start getting infinite turns before we even play. That's very scary. So there Frederica will have taken 2 turns before Raviesse can take even 1, which means our main attackers get hit. Okay, not the end of the world. So far we are in a pretty good position. And here I notice I forgot to change Raviesse back to the Paladin subjob, so she'll have a couple moves from her Thief job, and I'm fine with that because even with a Thief subjob, if she's built for tankiness, she's pretty tough, and with Shadowcast, she has a chance of dodging a couple hits, which is pretty good. See, right here, we actually took down most of the enemy team pretty early, and she's just left there facing Agrias, meaning the fight is pretty much over. Here we go, a little hit here. Now Raviesse is hitting our team, but with her confused status, she doesn't do that much damage, and we win. Pretty clean. Didn't get to see Raviesse much, though. Alright, so we've seen Raviesse evade quite a few attacks, and she was very successful in that way, as long as she was in range for the enemies to target her above the other guys. We've also seen her in a regular tank fashion, and she really does the job. In my opinion, MR tanks are really strong because they have defense, they have resistances. You don't need much more from a tank. You don't need the extra 1000 HP that a UR rank would provide them with. So Raviesse has done a great job, and as a tank, she is really fun to play. I would say that's the main reason to build her if you want to go for her, is she's funky. You can use her in several ways. And although I would argue that building her as a standard physical tank is better than trying funky evasion builds, it is very fun to be able to have several uses out of a character like this. And she also has a lot of use in manual PvP, where you can run her as a very tanky steel heart unit, that either protects your backline that's dealing damage from afar by charming whoever comes close, or slowly moves forward while being very difficult to kill, and then when you finally reach the enemy team, you charm them. So she actually has some use as well. Now, that was it for me. I hope you enjoyed your time here, and if you'd like to see more of those videos, please like and subscribe. It will make it much more likely that those are suggested in your YouTube feed in the future. So, thank you so much for your time, and have a great rest of your day.